We will call to order the Stevens Point Area Public School District Board public hearing of the 2016-17 school district budget, Monday, October 24th, 2016, at 6 p.m. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Levin?
Here.
Ms. Bailey?
Here.
Ms. Scott?
Here.
Ebel? Ebel's not
Miss
here.
Abel.
Ms. Ehrler?
Here.
Mr. Contos?
Here.
Ms. Portson?
Here.
And Ms. Baker is not here yet. So we do have a quorum, 6.
And Ms. Rano is excused.
And maybe Rano's, didn't do that very well.
Okay, we have a quorum. All right, we'll move into item 3, which is public hearing of the 2016-17 school district budget. A is presentation of budget overview.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, let's take a look at the breakdown of the budget. This will follow pretty closely to the book, obviously. Many of the excerpts come right from that. I'd like to start out with the bottom line. The bottom line is that the levy is going down 2.34%. The rate is going down 28 cents a thousand, or 3.34%. In this column, we have our expenditures, all the various funds, the general fund, the special projects funds, et cetera, go right down the line. I will have a session where I will repeat because we have several new board members, session on fund accounting during the BS committee, and cover some of that information. We have a $98.8 million in total expenditures of all funds. And we have revenue of 95, almost 96 million when you take the total revenue and tax levies and add them together. We have calculated in the revenue sheet $334,330 in exempt computer aid, which I'll explain when we get to that portion. When you take the total levy and subtract the computer aid, because that aid is paid by the state to reduce the levy, we get a levy rate, a levy of $33,786,388. That's down $808,652. Our equalized value is just under now 4.2 billion, and that's an increase of 1.01%. The state went up 3%, we went up 1%. That's good from that standpoint, is that makes us look relatively poor compared to the state average. So we did see an increase in our state aid, which also helped reduce our levy. So that was a good thing. On page 3 of your booklet, 2 and 3 in this area, you'll see this particular graph. And the thing about this is it shows that from about 2007 until now, we have hovered around the $8 to $10 range in the levy. One point here was just a tick below 8, but right along in here is where we've been running since 2000, 1997? Yeah, 1987, back in here. So that's a long tenure that we've been able to hold the levy rate right around that market. So that's been good, and you can see the last 7 years we've been below the state average in levy rate. Page 10 of your book, I replaced that. This was my error. I had picked up, and Jeff Evil was caught this, and I thank him. I wanted to thank him, but he isn't here yet. I'll thank him when he gets here. But this table and the corresponding graph, I had picked up the one that I was setting up for next year, because we don't have the 15-16 data yet, because all of the audits aren't in from the whole state. We don't have the state average, et cetera, and I inadvertently had picked that table and the information up and put that on the page. So this corrects that. Fortunately, it's not vital data in the sense of it was information only. When we put this online, this data will be correct. So you'll see the same document online, but it'll have the correct page information on there. This is the tax levy by community. We take the new 4.169 billion figure in equalized value, which is fair, full market value, if you will. And then you take the corresponding values of each of the municipalities that make up our district, the various towns, either all or parts thereof. And then you take our levy and you divide that levy by each of the percentages that each municipality is of our total. And that's how it's equally apportioned to each municipality. So no matter where you live in our district, your municipality is paying the exact fair share proportionally as everyone else. And you can see Stevens Point, the village of Plover, and the town of Hull make up the lion's share of our district, almost 70, not quite 75%, it's 73%, but that's quite a bit of chunk there, and then all these other pieces fill in. So each one is important, of course, but that's how this is calculated. You take the total levy, you divide it by the percent each municipality is of the district. Since everybody is assessed at full market value or equalized, it's on an even playing field, and then we levy the municipalities. We do not levy individual taxpayers. This is a change in equalized value by municipality. They're in the same order by the largest to the smallest percent of our district. And you can see graphically which ones have gained in value as they popped up and which ones have declined. Sherry had the greatest decline, 4.61% negative. The greatest incline percentage-wise was right here at Stockton, where they had 8.7% growth. So that was pretty good. But with our total levy going down, a way to describe this is these people are they're walking up a descending escalator. So, so when you look at the change in levy, you'll see a little bit different picture, because only the ones that had tremendous growth, like Stockton, show up on the positive, taking quite a bit larger share of the levy because of their growth. So they changed proportionally to others more greatly, so they picked up a little more of the levy. Sherry, who dropped the most, of course, is going to see a little less levy, but it all equalizes out when they're done. But it's just an interesting dynamic of how that works. So the total change in the levy, of course, was down 2.34%. Now, this is the revenue limit worksheet. I put this on because I wanted to show you. I'm going to just cruise through this, but I'm going to go by this section first, then which is, well, I'll explain when I get to that section. And then by this section, which is enrollment, then this section. Now, this isn't in your book. This was handed out separately in the packet, this document. Then I'll look at it this section, then right down till we're done. So, first of all, this is how we start out on the left-hand side of this worksheet right here. This is basically a work area, and these numbers, like this one, is going to carry right to the top right, and then we fall down through this calculation. That's how this works. So in the upper left, this is last year's data showing how we get to the starting point, where we had last year's aid certification and then the levy and then different things, numbers that come off of that. In the interest of time, I won't go through each one, but that's how we get this base revenue that starts us off on that upper right-hand corner. Then you've probably heard the term the 3-year rolling average. Okay, this is the revenue limit. These are the 3 years, and these are the rolling years, 13, 14, 15. Then we get an average. Then we drop 13 out, bring these two numbers down here, these 2 years, and add in 16. Therefore, the rolling, we roll 1 year out, roll the next year in. When you average all of these numbers, we get this. And that is a 31 student decrease over the prior year. As a result, the state has a hold harmless on there for 1 year only, where we get 288,000 to make up for that loss of 31 students. That's only for 1 year. We won't get that next year. This is new in here. This is special needs voucher. This is not the voucher system to the appropriate schools. private schools. Well, it does involve them, but this is special needs. So if students are, special needs are turned down twice, they, for open enrollment, they can go to any private school, any school they want to stay, period. And the state will add a number in there, we can't control that, and then they'll take $12,000 away from us. Of course, if you're with me, this is a 3-year rolling average, so it'll take, it won't be till the 4th year till we get the full value in. So we'll be behind the curve on that money for a while. Then when the student matriculates out, we'll catch up, it'll be in our numbers theoretically when they go. This is the lower left portion of the worksheet. They take a look at our exempt computers. This is a number that the state determines. Businesses submit these claims to what computer equipment is exempt. The state then calculates that for each school district. It's subtracted from our TIF out, et cetera. And then our total levy through this formula right here goes into this. This number times that number divided by the levy gives us this number here. And it will change as the total levy changes, this number changes as well. This is the upper right. So that number is carried forward from the top left quadrant. And then you divide that by the 3-year rolling average, the first year, and you get a cost, a revenue limit cost per student. It's about $9,300 in this district. This area right here is the allowed per pupil member change. That used to be filled with dollars. I pointed that out right here. Here's the table. In 2007-8, that used to contain $264.12, then $274. In the 9-10 school year, it dropped to $200. As you can see the graph right here, $200. Then it was a negative $518.92, first time that ever happened. It dropped out, and then it went up $50, $75 for 2 years, and the last 2 years it's been zero. So that's a number where this increases our revenue limit, so it's something that we're pretty eager to see have some dollars in there, but we haven't had any for the last couple of years. And you can see by this graph why we've been struggling, and many other districts have been struggling as well. So, had there been money here, it would have caused this to increase, and then when you multiply it by the new 3-year average, that would have gone up. But there is a hold harmless on the it's a non-recurring exemption, it's a 1 year only, that our revenue limit will be in the following year at least the same as it was in the preceding year. So we do get an additional $288,000 this year only. We'll have to run through the formula and see what happens next year, but that's no guarantee. Well, that will not be here next year. We'll just have to see where the numbers come out. And Jeff, I thanked you here for catching that. I changed page 10 entirely because that turned out to be a whole graph that I picked up in there, so I changed that all. Thank you. Then we have a section of exemptions, that prior year carryover, if there is any, and transfer of service. We usually run around $100,000 each year. That's services coming from other districts or other municipalities like the county or a state, where services have to be provided to a child. We didn't have that service before. It's an additional cost to us, so we have to claim it. DPI approves it or disapproves it, and that's the number that they've approved this year. And then there's some other things here that can alter the limit. So now we run that up and we're at 68 million. We drop down to the next section, and our total non-recurring exemptions are 2.8 million. That's made up of these numbers here. We've got the private school voucher deduction, and then we've got adjustment for refunded and rescinded taxes, a small amount just correcting an error. Then we've got energy efficiency exemption, which you're familiar with, the roofing project that we did, and declining enrollment exemption. Remember that from the 3-year rolling average, we carried that in. Now, this is a private school voucher information, and when we started this out in 2015-16, we had 23 K-8 students, 16 9-12 for a total of 39 students. We do not know who they are. We're not allowed to know that, which is fine, but we do have the numbers. This year we have 30 K-8, 15 9-12 for a total of 45. So we've gone up 6 students over last year. Just thought you might want to see that. Meg and I talked about this afternoon. She brought an article to my attention and dug these numbers out for you tonight. So that generates the revenue limit with exemptions, and then this is our October 15th aid, and we had to wait till then to find out what that number is. The state controls that. That went up a little bit because of our equalized value. So we picked up 37. What happens then is this is our revenue limit, and we subtract the state aid from that. And that's our allowable levy. We can't exceed that for those things that you have a choice for, like the 10 fund, the 38 fund, the 41. If it's a debt that's been approved by the voters, that's not included in this. But that's where you get the absolute control right there on the revenue limit. We can't go over that. Okay? So then that is brought down on the next line. And here is this is non-referendum debt. This is principal and interest related to that $5 million issue we did several years back to replace that real bad equipment at the high school and all the electricity and at the elementaries, et cetera. And that'll be for a few years yet. And then the difference between this number and that number is this, because we can't exceed it. Then you go down here, we have a levy for community ed. This is outside the revenue limit. And then this is a prior year chargeback, just a miscellaneous thing that we do. It varies from year to year. And you total this all up, and this is the levy you get at that point. Then you subtract out the $334,300, which is the computer aid, and you get this number. So we then just have to simply add up these columns here to get back up to our levy amount 33,786. And then when that is divided by our total TIF out, you get the $8.10 where you saw. So it's a lot of process, it's a lot of work to go through, and there are a lot of variables in there, but that's kind of the process, and I think it's good. Obviously, you're not going to just sit down and figure this out by yourself, but at least you get a feel for how it works through the spreadsheet. There's a reconciliation page also on it, in following page 2, and I just wanted to show that to you. This reconciles everything down to make sure that we're doing it properly, and it also calculates and shows that we have levied to our maximum, because sometimes we get a question once in a while, are you guys levying to the maximum, or are you letting stuff go? No, we're levying to the maximum. Now, I caution you too, our audit goes in and the state looks at things. If we find a student, for example, that we counted and they assumed would be back, or there was an error or something, let's say a student, they adjust the count by 1, then we would be over levied by 1 student, which would be like $9,700 or whatever, and then they'd withhold that out of our final aid payment. That's how they adjust that. So you can't over levy. I mean, if we over levied here, they withhold whatever we over levied out of our last aid payment. You don't get away with anything. So we try to be as accurate as we can anyway, but just wanted you to know that. So this is in the center of your book, back one page. This is the actual document showing what you're approving tonight following this hearing. These are the balance sheets and the revenue. We have revenue in the general fund of $77.1 million, and you have expenditures of $77.8 million. This is the $650,000 deficit we talked about before. This is the payment for the salaries that were deferred because the retroactive payments were going to be made last year, the $1.5 million. That didn't occur completely. Some of them were pushed into July. They weren't made in June, so that's the reason for this. And then these other, like special projects funds, the debt service, these are balanced. Debt service will be varied a little bit because there's a difference between the principal and interest, they're paid over 2 calendar years, and affect our 1 calendar year, they affect our 2 different fiscal years, so they often and usually don't match up. And then, of course, there's nothing in capital projects or food services in balance. Trust fund is always off like this because that, we bring in less, we're paying out now to pay down our OPEB debt and balance that out. Our community ed is balanced with expenditures and revenues. And then we get down to our, all of our funds here, where you see our expenditures, we're down 1.54%. And then we have our budget, where we're down 2.34%. And then we're right back to where we started from, where, say, as you can see, we're down 2.34 here. We're down 3.34 in our rate, and subject to your questions, I think that takes us right through it.
So if I'm a taxpayer,
Yes, ma'am.
bottom line, what jumps out at me? What do I want to know about this? That minus 2.34, and I believe you said 28,
Well, if I can jump way back here,
I mean, they're not going
a
to
couple
know.
of things.
Yeah,
One probably that's most valuable to the taxpayer is this graph right here. If you can see the blue line, the consistency over the years, I think, shows that the board has been very
good stewards, I would say. Yeah,
in trying to hold the line, in trying to have a very reasonable budget, trying to deliver a quality education for as reasonable a price as they possibly can. Under the circumstances, there's a lot of variabilities that we have to deal with, or I should say a lot of variables we have to deal with. And still, through all of it, we've been able to make a pretty good show of things at the district level. And for this year, of course, we'd like to be able to have a little bit more money to do many things that are needed, but we don't have that authority. Before revenue limits, school boards, in fact, that law's still in the books, but it's amended slightly by the revenue limit. School boards used to have the requirement under law to set whatever levy is needed to support the educational plan of the school district. So, for example, we're down 808,000. You would have, in those days, had the ability to keep that levy the same as the prior year and use that 800 to accomplish a lot of things. You'd have a lot more tools in your
Right.
toolkit to accomplish things, which you don't have now. The only way to deal with that now, to increase the levy, is through a referendum. That's the only
Right.
tool that they've allowed school boards to have. And
so are there any, if that's okay, so are there any specific numbers for the taxpayer that they're going to look at and say, because they're not going to look at the formulas or, I mean, your generalities. Is there anything that they'll say, you know what, they're spending less and we're going to be taxed less? I mean, what are they going to say? Is
well,
that,
they are going to get taxed less.
28 is
That's
that the
number right there.
$28?
It's $808,000 less
Right.
that they'll be taxed. So
2.3%.
2.3%?
it's down 2.3%, or it's 28 cents a thousand.
28.
Now, again, I
That's a
thought-
little misleading, though, because if I'm in Stockton, is that right? Am I pronouncing that?
Yes.
Yeah, Stockton.
My taxes will be going up.
Well, remember that presentation I
Right.
made on assessed versus equalized? This decrease, this tax rate of $8.10 is equalized. That means it's fair market value.
Right.
That means it's 100%. If your municipality, the municipality in which you live, if their tax bill, you look at that percent at the top
Right.
center, it says 100, you'll have $8.10. Unless there's some type of
Right.
adjustment, special adjustment, like a correction or maybe some state forestry adjustment or something like that. But it'll be really close. If it's less than 100%, say like 95, then your mill rate won't be 810, it'll be higher than that. Because you're changing the denominator. We're still gonna levy this amount.
Right.
That doesn't change, and when that's apportioned among municipalities, that doesn't change. So I'll make up a number here. If your municipality has to raise $1 million, it's only gonna raise $1 million. If it's divided by 100% of the property value, it'll be 810. But if it's 95%, it's gonna be a number bigger than that, 830, 840,
Right,
something like
okay.
that. If they just reappraised and it winds up at 105%, then it would be like $8.05. It'll be
Right,
below that.
okay.
then, so. But you're only gonna pay the same amount of tax. It's just the rates, that levy rate changes, and people really get confused about that.
Yeah, that's why I wanted you to say something and
Well,
just
that-
kind of clear that up.
That is explained in the booklet.
Right,
So if taxpayers look at that budget booklet, it will explain what I just said, and after you read that, it should become a little clearer.
So the bottom line, as you noted, and I think you could pull it up, the Survey of Equalized Tax Rates shows that since the fall of '97, our district has levied between $8 and $10 consistently, and for the last number of years, we have been closer to the $8 than to the $10. I mean, the tax rate has been relatively steady, but the reality is that the state has placed strict limits on the total dollar amount that we as a district can levy to support our school district unless we would choose at some point to go to referendum.
Now, we have to realize too that this is a reason, this is a significant reason for that. And that is, we're not getting additional funds. We don't have additional revenue limit authority.
From the
So-
state,
From the state.
from a per pupil perspective.
It's right here, and the allowable per pupil member change, they're giving us 0. The last 2 years, we've had nothing, no increase at all. So of course, that's going to help us keep the levy and the levy rate lower. Of course, the levy rate is also a product of how fast we grow. If we didn't have 1% rate, that levy rate would be higher. If we grew at 4%, that levy rate would be lower. So I mean, those factors, there are so many moving pieces here that it can get people confused very quickly if you don't know what's happening.
So I just want to note, because we have all been, well, our new board members, not as much as the rest of us, but in the last year and a half, less than, we have settled all of the labor contracts
Yes,
with our teachers in particular, but with everyone, post-Act 10, and that had not happened with this district. But I do want to note that this also reflects the fact that we settled at a 0.5%, a 1%, a 1.5%, a 0.62%, I believe, a 0.77%, and the most recent contract, which was CPI, it was the top amount we could settle for was 0.12. So I do want to note that we have kept our budget stable, but we all, I believe, appreciate as board members that our employees have seen less than half of CPI since 2011. I mean, post-Act 10, that's just the reality, and it's the reality of this number you're pointing out, that we've been given no or very little ability to increase per pupil, and we are under strict limits in terms of what it is we can levy to support our school district. So we appreciate all the hard work that all of you have done to take a budget that 3 months ago, we were looking at some pretty large numbers in terms of deficit. We are still looking at a budget that has a planned deficit, but the deficit is related to those labor contracts that we settled And we are now at the point where we have settled all past contracts and will be moving forward. Any other questions of Tom or comments with respect to Sam?
I've got one question. What was the $14 million in special projects?
I couldn't hear you.
What was the $14 million in special projects? On line 2 there.
Oh, that is special ed, special education. This is 27 fund, special education. This is the cost of special education. What happens is all of the salaries, all of the benefits, all of the purchases, et cetera, that deal with federal projects and special education all go into the 27 fund. And then all of the federal and state project monies are applied to that. And then the difference is the local share, and that's what is in the transfer. And I can show you that if we go back right here. 8.446 million. That 8.4 million is part of that 14. So in other words, we only get about 6 million in federal and state project money to run special ed and all the federal projects. And the difference has to come from the local share, which is that 8.4 million. And then this has to balance out. It has, you can't have a levy in that, in 27 fund, you might have a levy someplace else on that one. Good question.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, we'll move into item 3B, which is public comments. There was no one that signed up to make public comments this evening. Is there anyone here this evening who did not sign up, who would like to make a public comment to the board on the budget? And no one is indicating. So I would ask for a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Don't you need to call for comments twice?
Actually, I think it's 3 times.
Is it 3 times?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone here for public comments on the budget? No, there is not. Is there anyone here for public comments on the budget? No one is indicating.
Just making sure.
All right.
Move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. The public hearing is adjourned. We will now call to order the Stevens Point Area Public School District Board Special School Board Meeting from Monday, October 24, 2016, 6:30 PM to order. And Sue, could you do the roll call and verification of quorum?
Ms. Baker? Here. Ms. Daly?
Here.
Mr. Ebo?
Here.
Ms. Erler?
Here.
Mr. Contos?
Here.
Mr. Levin?
Here.
Ms. Fortson?
Here.
Ms. Randall's excused. Ms. Scott?
Here.
We have a quorum, 8 present.
Okay, could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving into item 4, which is public comments. No one signed up to speak. Is there anyone here present to speak that would like to address the board?
You want to call it a couple more times?
No. Because it's not the budget hearing anymore. Okay, so let's move on to item 5. Excuse me, we don't have presentations tonight. Item 6 is consent agenda, minutes from the October 10th, 2016 regular October board meeting.
Move for approval as printed.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion or changes? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Item 7A, Business Services. 1, approval of the 2016-17 district budget and approval of the 2016-17 district levy. So,
Put a motion on first.
yeah, I'm looking for a motion.
So I would move to approve the 2016-17 budget as shown on pages 12 and 13 of the 2016-17 budget report for expenditures of all funds at $98,841,132 and revenues for all funds at $95,996,810.
Second.
Any discussion or comments? I will ask Sue to call the roll, please.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Daly, Ms. Daly. You want to roll?
Yes.
Mr.
You
Ebel,
got Missy.
Yes.
Ms. Erler,
Yes.
Mr. Contos.
Yes.
Mr. Levin.
Yes.
Passes. One excused.
Okay, and then I would move to approve the 2016-17 levy at $33,786,388.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, by Eagle. Any discussion or comments? Sue, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Ebel,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Daly,
Yes.
Ms. Erler,
Yes.
Mr. Contos.
Yes.
Mr. Levin,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Randall's excused. It passes 8-1 and 1 excused.
Okay, take a look at item 8, A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, our upcoming meetings. Our next will be November 14, 2016, our regular November meeting. And I'll note, again, reminder that we're going to have some computer training after this for Google Docs, but I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.